You are listening to Unity in Our Community on Radio Cardiff 98.7 FM.
Today I have a really special guest, Rhys from Screen Alliance Wales, and we are talking all about Valleywood, the amazing film industry in South Wales. So now we'll go into that interview and we'll be back after this. So if there's anyone listening to the show and they are thinking about, you know, maybe they've got a dream, they want to have a role like in film or TV, what is your advice to them? Like, I mean, I guess we've discussed like it doesn't have to be a formal path. I do always send people to your website to check like what's going on, but I know you put some really interesting things on your social media as well. Like I always see those and share those because there's so much that you guys are doing, like different workshops. I also follow One Shop Doc, and they're trying to get people into documentary filmmaking, you know, and there's so much going on that people can get involved in, isn't there?
I think it's sort of, I think the concept, well, it's certainly the way that I'm kind of learning on a daily basis is that sort of, you know, I spend a lot of time, you know, watching these behind the scenes docs on YouTube. There's so
I
much
love those.
and so, yeah, Insider and, you know, sort of Wired, and they do these kind of things about sort of, you know, I didn't actually sort of realize until it was about last summer, but the whole thing of making silent props, you know, making, if you're seeing a scene in a bar and there's actually, so they make ice cubes out of rubber so that they don't chinkle in the glass when people think, or they're making pool balls out of sort of squash balls and painting them so that people can play with them without them sort of making a noise, which sort of, but then that's the whole thing, is that somebody else has to go and, you know, make the noises afterwards to sort of, to how they kind of all sort of all done. So I think it's just really kind of and I kind of, it's about more you understand about the industry, the more things you find out, you know, you know, there's an element of luck in terms of things, but it's still the more you can just understand, you can find there are niches in the industry which are kind of underserved. There are sort of certain places where, but there are shortages, and you know, there's, now I've talking to people who work manage a company doing digital imaging technicians, so DITs, and they have a problem because they are people who need certain camera skills, but also some post-production skills. And because they fall between two stools, they got people who want to be editors will go into post-production, people on a camera go into sort of camera skills, and there's like this gap in between whereby this people don't realize that there's an opportunity. If you've got a little bit of both, there's actually an area where there's actually bit of a shortage, you know, and sort of like there's a kind of like there's that these little cracks between, sort of, because the industry is so diverse and stretching, particularly in the larger productions, you've got more and more specialized departments that these things come up, and they're kind of like really kind of you know, sort of short on stuff
where you
need,
you know, all of those skills, more than just one kind of narrow path.
And sort of generally sort of like, so my guidance is always kind of, it's watch a lot of stuff, watch the credits, see the names at the end, safely stalk for those people, then check them out on social media, see if they've got a Twitter profile, see do they interact with other people, do they, because a lot of people are out there giving advice and, you know, maybe even providing opportunities if you ask them, but you don't know until you've got the names. You can find the names, they're on the, you know, these TV programs, you know, and then, you know, just generally we just say, well, you know, we even if you're not applying for a job, we encourage people, you know, to reach out to us, send your CV in, and sometimes it's something as simple as, you know, with regarding to applying for things, is that you know, we had a job in one department a few years back, 50 people applied. I gave the CVs to the head of department. He came back 5 minutes later and said, these are 3 people shortlisted. And I'm going, oh, how did you get from 50 down to 3 so quickly? And he said, only 3 people mentioned my department in their personal statement. If they don't want to work in my department, I don't want them. So he was looking for people.
That's interesting, isn't it?
He was looking for people who had mentioned his department in his personal statement. Because if you want to work in his department, because if you're applying for editing and you've talked about camera skills, it's a bit of casual flattery to, make sure you're talking about editing and post-production skills in your personal statement.
Yeah.
Everything else is useful. Understanding of the skills is useful. Even in a post-production editing, understanding about lenses and things like that, that's great. But put it down further down, prioritize your the fact you've used different types of software, and so those are things you want to talk about if you're going to
Yeah.
post-production.
Do your research. And also,
Yes, yeah.
also, I always try to imagine, like, if I was the manager, like, or if I was the boss of that department, like what I would be looking for. I always try to switch it in my head, like what would they be looking for, or what would make my life easier, from their point of view.
Yeah, because I know I was talking to somebody from Disney who's on an interview panel, and somebody walked in. There were 4 of them on the panel, and somebody walked in and sort of said, "Yeah, I love your work on Spider-Man." At which point she turned around, you could see just like the other 3 people are just like switched off. At which point she'd go, "Yeah, that was Sony." Just because it's Marvel doesn't necessarily mean it's Disney. And so it's about those kind of things you can kind of. There's certain things whereby you can. There's a luck in terms of the final decision, but there's certain things that can keep you in the mix. We've had people with slightly comical email addresses, and they don't realize that they're kind of switching people off before they've even read your CV.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like, because I met you before when I was doing BME Invest project with East, and I used to have to give advice about these things, and often a lot of young people they I think they make their email address, they don't really think about it, or they think it's funny or whatever, but yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, and it's one of those things whereby if you've got a personal one, it's based on a sort of a school nickname, that's fine, but it's free to create another Gmail account, or a Hotmail account, or whatever. Or other providers are available, but it's free. There's free sort of places you can set up, and it just sort of, if you have something bland, which is your name, and the domain, so at gmail.com, they can't make a judgment based on that. Whereas if yours is sort of, lad out on town sort of thing at gmail.com.
You got to make yourself a professional email that's
it's
basically with your name and
and it's just a sort of, you want to try and ensure that at least if they're going to be making a judgment, you're in control of where they're making that judgment, so that you're making judgments based on the information you're providing and not on things like your kind of your email address or
absolutely
like that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to wrap it up there, but thank you so much for your time and joining us today. And I would encourage anyone to sign up to your website and follow you on social media, anyone who is interested at all, or maybe they've never thought about getting into film, maybe they've got those either practical skills, creative skills, there's so many transferable skills, like you say, so many different departments and jobs that people don't necessarily realize they might have all of the right skills, but they just didn't transfer, they can transfer them.
I mean, accountants, that's something we've been sort of particularly trying to because we've got a multi-million pound production, is actually somebody has to be in charge of that money, and so managing it, go around. So it's things like accountancy. People don't think about, basically any job you can think of, there's a role where those skills can be transferred usefully within the industry.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. That was great talking to you today, and see you soon.
Thanks a lot.
You are listening to Unity in Our Community on Radio Cardiff 98.7 FM.